All right, so the next question is about the keeper's test, which is very, very famous. Some employees have said that the keeper's test, the mandate about radical honesty, and other parts of the safe culture sort of create an environment of fear and anxiety. What are your thoughts about that?
Let me ask you a question, Pal. As a part of our culture, we want a highly talent-dense organization. In other words, an organization filled with rock stars. Think about rock stars from different fields. Okay. Think about Michael Schumacher from Formula One. Think about Michael Jordan from basketball. Think about Tiger Woods from golf, right? There's so many examples. Tell me something. Every time a Roger Federer goes into a game, into a big match or a big tournament, do you think they feel fear and anxiety?
Yes.
Yes, they do. So if you think about it, Payal, all of these rock stars, before they walk into a new game, still feel some sense of anxiety, some sense of
fear.
Fear of saying, look, are we really good enough? And then they are challenging themselves and pushing themselves as you move forward. And I would say, if you look at the same scenario in an organization like ours, for those people who don't know what's a keeper test basically means every quarter, so every 3 months, every single person in SAFE asks their manager that if I resign tomorrow, will you fight hard enough to keep me or not? And when that happens, there's a very clear answer that yes, I'll fight hard, maybe I'll fight hard, or no, I will not fight hard, which is there. There's no ambiguity, and you're not even linking it to performance, by the way. There are different metrics for performance. We use OKRs for performance. Right. So the point I'm making there is that, that I think makes it very powerful in going ahead, and if you are doing great stuff, you are positively reaffirmed that keep doing what you're doing. If you're going off the track, then you are told very clearly that look, I may keep you, I may not keep you, but the good part is the message has been delivered loud and clear. Now you are a rock star. That's why you're a part of the company. Right. You've delivered in the past. We believe in you, but here is your very clear communication about the fact that you need to roll up your socks and really make it happen. And then the third one, where you say, look, everything's done. We tried a lot, but we don't think you belong here anymore. And that's the third piece. Now, will this create fear and anxiety at times? Unfortunately, yes, it will. But in my mind, I've also seen this, and it's not just me. Remember, we all created this together, right, that it also creates an environment where somebody who's performing consistently thrives. Now, the last question which can come out from this is, hold on, what happens if I don't perform consistently? Because it's very difficult to perform consistently every single quarter. Right? So what happens if something goes bad 1 quarter or 2 quarters? Is loyalty of the company towards me doesn't say that they should stick around or we should stick around and we should be given a chance? The answer is yes, but it's two ways. Think about the company, because there's a loyalty of the organization towards its family members and the family members towards the organization. So if the organization doesn't perform for 1 quarter or 2 quarters, do I expect everybody to stick around? Hell yes. Every company goes up and comes down and goes up and comes down, and that's just a sinusoidal curve that every organization in the world goes through.
Right.
But if the organization doesn't perform consistently for 3, 4, 5 quarters, and you cannot see any scope in which the organization will be coming out of the challenge and start performing what it needs to perform, do I expect you to stay here? No, I don't.
Of course,
it's exactly the same for an individual. So that's the reason why I know, unfortunately, it does create some fear and anxiety. But I look at it, if you are a rock star, forget about the organization's keeper test. You should do a keeper test on your own self at the end of every quarter to say, am I doing enough to stay here and perform? And when I say stay here, this might not be an environment. It might be not a technology stack that I want to work on. It might not be something which I would like to play around with as a salesperson. I don't want to do this as a finance person, and maybe go somewhere else where you can do better. So it's a win-win in my mind if somebody feels that they would not want to be a part of the organization which is growing in a particular way, in a particular field which is out there. And yeah, that's how I look at the keeper's test.
just to like sort of get a little more on that aspect, who would not fit this culture?
So if you think about the core principles of our culture, the first piece is we want an organization which is crazy focused on the customer.
Right.
You know, when can you be customer focused? When you're not focused on your own self.
Right.
And when are you not focused on yourself? When you don't have a lot of ego. So the first thing that I want all of us, because people who have a lot of ego generally would not even be open to candid feedback and others. Generally, they don't survive very long in the organization.
Right.
The second part of our culture is all about very high talent density with great judgment. Judgment, as we spoke about in the past, is about IQ, EQ, and somebody who can understand the context. So generally, that you will see across the organization an exceptionally high IQ level where people are really very smart. Right. If you can't grasp concepts at the speed at which a lot of people will be talking and working, it probably is not the right place for you to be. The third piece is all about transparency. So we are an extremely transparent organization. We actually call it we are uncomfortably transparent. What that means is that my calendar is always open. Payal calls me all the time where, you know, Saket, I couldn't find a slot on your calendar, so I see you're boarding a flight and therefore I'm calling you. And Payal is still fine. I have people calling me like, look, no other slot. I had to call you during the time you're sleeping. You know, that's the only time I can talk to you, right? And I totally get it. So that happens all the time. But everybody's calendars are open. We go ahead and we share everything, good, bad, or ugly, on our weekly town halls which happen, right? So it's an extreme transparent culture. I like this saying, right? We don't have a open door policy. We have a no door policy where when you give that context, because remember high talent density, which means very smart people are here. So if you're somebody who likes hiding things, if you're somebody who says, no, I don't want to share things with other people and I want my calendar to be private, I want my things not to be heard by everybody, I want my Slack channels to be private, this is definitely not the place for you. Then the fourth tenet is really about candor, because we are radically candid. A lot of people, unfortunately, because of the culture, cannot take very direct feedback. A lot of people actually feel that feedback means, you know, it's the end of the world and it's just not the right place to be. So if people cannot take direct feedback, right, and feedback is tough when it's constructive. It means, right, you know, it's not always positive. If people can't take feedback, this is not the right place for them, because you have to be able to dissect, because you have super high IQ and you have the context. You have to dissect that, look, was this feedback genuine or not genuine? And again, we have a 5-way framework on how do you give and receive feedback, and look at that. So if you can't give, and more importantly, if you can't receive feedback, not the place for you. And the final part is freedom and autonomy. So how can you go and act with autonomy, right? And this is a place where autonomy comes with responsibility, right? So autonomy and accountability. So when you're super autonomous, because you're given all the freedom in the organization, when it comes to leaves, when it comes to you judging what you need to work on, how you need to do things, right? Because my job as your leader is to set the context of the why we are doing,
and what
sometimes what, yeah, but almost never the how. Because if I have to set the how, we've clearly hired the wrong people. So that autonomy of deciding the how, you can always say, hold on, why can we not define the why? Of course anybody can define the why, and while we have been defining the why, we've been getting everybody involved. But I would almost say that that's one of the privileges that I'm fortunately blessed with, because as the CEO of the company, my number one job is to set the strategy of the company or the why of the company. Absolutely. Now, of course, anybody and everybody joins in the organization only when they feel aligned to the why, because if that's not there, it's fundamentally disconnected. So when everybody's aligned on the why, they need to be understanding and doing their own how. And therefore, the autonomy of judging the right how to do it in the most optimal, time efficient way which is out there, that is really the crux of of the kind of people who not only survive but thrive in a company like ours. And we have very clearly been having one of the lowest attrition in the industry during the great resignation, during the great layoffs, everything else which is going on in between. We've consistently had less than 10% of attrition over many years now. I think it's all thanks to the culture and all the incredible work that we've all been doing. So I hope that answers your question around, who not only makes it but thrives and flies in an organization like ours.